This is the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello and welcome to the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and the bad news about money. I'm Kim Kiyosaki and I'm hosting today's show. Robert is actually teaching an event, but not just teaching, he's also participating as a student because we always have to keep learning because things are moving so quickly. And today we have a really special guest and a very important program. So have you ever thought of taking a product, inventing a product, bringing a product to the market? So we have a guest who has done that many, many, many times. As a matter of fact, she's done it 3,000 times since 2008, and her name is Jules Pieri. She's the co-founder and CEO of The Grommet, and she basically finds great products, great inventors, and sometimes not so great entrepreneurs, but turns people into great entrepreneurs because, as you're going to find out, a lot of people who bring product to market really have no business idea. So she not only finds great products, but she actually helps people get them to market and actually helps build great entrepreneurs. So Jules Pieri, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Kim. Happy to be here.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you on the program because, you know, there's all the big box stores and all the big consumer companies, but I see you as kind of the champion of the underdog. You're out there for the independent inventor, the independent entrepreneur. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we launch innovative products from small businesses.
Okay, and your company is called The Grommet. What is The Grommet, and how did you get started?
The name itself is actually a piece of hardware. If you think about like an eyelet on your shoe, that's a grommet, or a shower ring, shower curtain ring. And I love hardware. I'm an industrial designer, so I just have this kind of geeky affinity for hardware. Don't take me into Sephora. Take me in an Ace Hardware. I'm much happier.
So what is your background?
Industrial designer was my early career, what I trained for. So I did design products directly. And then ultimately, I kind of moved over to the business side of creativity, if you will, and worked in a couple of startups before this. One of them is called Continuum, which is an innovation consultancy. And one of them competed with LinkedIn, so you never heard of it. It was called Zigs.
Oh.
And then a bunch of big consumer products companies in there, so Hasbro, Playskool, Keds, StrideRite, and some work overseas even.
So you've been around product invention for a long time.
Yeah, it's. I would say that while business is my craft, design is my passion, and so I've just always wanted to blend the two.
And you have a new book that just came out in April called How We Make Stuff Now, Turn Ideas into Products That Build Successful Businesses. And I have that book, and it really looks like quite the blueprint for somebody from starting from nothing to actually getting the product to market and then growing the product and growing their business.
Yes. Yeah, I have to tell you, I wrote the book because it didn't exist, almost like why I started the business. If I had seen a business like The Grommet, a vibrant place to find innovative products, a community, if I'd seen that, I'd be just cheering them on. I would have never started it. Same with the book. There's nothing like it, that these entrepreneurs have to figure it out by themselves. And watching and working with 3,000 of them, we pretty much had the playbook. We knew what they do to succeed, and we knew what the pitfalls are, so why not put it in one place?
So you're kind of like the Shark Tank.
We're kinder, gentler.
You're not the Kevin O'Learys of the world.
Not so much. No, you know what? Here's the deal. We have a pretty extreme vetting process because we see 300 products a week, and we launch 6. And we've launched a bunch that become famous, so your listeners would know, like Fitbit or SodaStream, OtterBox, Well water bottles, Mrs. Meyer's, the cleaning products, Bananagram. So we see these companies when they're nascent, when they're really tiny. But our vetting process is so extreme. We're only launching 6 of them a week.
6 out of 300. You look at 300 products a week and you pick 6.
Yes.
How do you know what makes a good product? What's going to be a hit? What are you looking for?
Well, because we see so much, we can actually make 2 really quick preliminary judgments. One is definitive. Is this product well known? If it's well known, it wouldn't be a grommet because our community would be disappointed. We want to tell you something new every day. The harder one is this product, its promise. Is it distinctive? Is it doing something new in its space? And that just takes experience, frankly. So of the 300, about 30 a week have that promise, and we will get samples. We will contact the company. Half of what we see is inbound anyway, so the companies are hoping we'll reach out to them. And then we'll start engaging, testing the product, making sure that it delivers and that the company is what it says it is, whether it has a unique business model or it's made in the USA or the entrepreneur is underrepresented, say a veteran. We're digging in, making sure that whatever we're going to claim is true, essentially, because we're lending our reputation to these unknown companies. The folks who engage in our community know us, but they're hoping that we're going to introduce them to companies that are also trustworthy.
Right. So if I'm listening to this program, I'm sitting out here listening to this program right now, and I may have an idea for a product, what are there like 2 or 3 key things that you're going to say, if you must have this with your product in order to see us, in order to bring it to the grommet?
A couple of things. One is it should be just about in production, like you might have done a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo campaign and run one production run, like you've done some early manufacturing, but you're ready to start selling for real. Those are more like science projects, and you're ready for a business because we're going to bring more demand than you might be ready for otherwise. I would say, in general, stepping back, this has nothing to do with the grommet, but if I were inventing a product, I'd want to know there's a reasonable target market for it. So I would do the homework to scope that market, try to quantify it. It's so much work to do one of these businesses. You want to go after a large population who either has a problem that they have to deal with repetitively, or a situation, something they enjoy doing that this product could enhance. So you don't want to do something that's super, super fringe. An example that would be a lot of parents invent something for something that's a very short moment in time in their child's life, and there's probably nothing wrong with the product. The product does a good job probably, but the need for it's very short. It might be a month in the child's development. So it's very hard to find customers because nobody's trying to solve a problem that's very short term.
And you talk about that a lot, about a product that solves a problem, because we talk about that as well. So, to us, that's one of the key things. If there's a problem out there and you can find a solution to it and create a product that solves the problem, that could be a home run.
Yeah, and I will say, even though I'm saying, being very, sort of cautionary, like make sure there's a market and don't just talk to your mother and your neighbor or your brother, like do the work and figure out some of the statistics around that population, which is eminently doable. Google Trends, Small Business Administration data, even looking at Amazon can be super helpful. Do the work because it's going to be your life. So, save yourself that. But then I'm going to tell you something opposite. Just because you don't find a product on the market or a service on the market that solves this problem, don't assume that it's a bad idea. Like, I, every day in this business, see a business that solves a problem that I never even imagined I had or that anyone would solve. So it sometimes is
kind of like Apple. Kind of like Apple.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody knew they needed an iPad.
Exactly. That's a great example where, innovation can come from anyone. So I do like people to feel confident in their own, ability to fill whole. That in our experience, only 10% of the people we work with have any prior experience in the market where they're going to be. Like, their professions that are nothing to do with product most of the time. They're dentists or teachers, and here they are inventing a product.
So they're inventing a product not necessarily from their field of professionalism.
No, it kind of falls in 2 buckets. Either half of them kind of solve a problem that they understand. They're avid fishermen, say, and they solve a problem. We launched a couple of products this week that are in that bucket. So they do understand the area, but their day job is something different. Or there's something about their day job where they see a material or a technology or a business model, and they transport it over to something else. Like they They, might bring, in the case of, let's say the fisherman one, I'm kind of making this up because this isn't the origin story, but they use silicone to hold fishing lures much more tightly and safely in a very compact format. It's possible that that those entrepreneurs saw silicone used in some other application, like holding cosmetics or in a, holding medical instruments in an ER, tools. Like, that's what I mean. You could transfer, like, oh, wow, that's a grippy material. And fishing tackle boxes are just open boxes. They just have little slots that, everything just jumbles around. Why couldn't you organize this?
And so sometimes it can be something very, very simple that makes a great product.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's easy to communicate, easy to demonstrate, easy to use, like one of the trends we see that is sort of a negative trend is people are over-appifying everything. Like, does it really need an app?
Yeah.
Does it really? Like put yourself in the
That's a good word, over-apping. I like that.
Yeah, I made that up.
Trademark that, copyright that. Let me ask you this, because a lot of people, they get so excited about the product. They got a product. Yes, I got a product. I'm going to be a billionaire because I have this great product. But what percentage of people that come to you with a product understand the business of entrepreneurship, understand how to build a business?
I would say probably about a third have an idea of what they're going to get into. It's certainly not the majority. And I'm pretty charitable about that because what the heck did I know? Even with, I have a fairly deep experience in entrepreneurship, but I was hired into startups. And when you start one, it's really different. You're doing everything from emptying the trash to negotiating, your articles of incorporation and stuff you don't know how to do day one. I mean, I'm talking, those are 2 day one activities. Let's get incorporated, and empty the trash. So it's
you help these entrepreneurs build their business and build their brand, as well as get their product to market.
Primarily the latter. We definitely do provide a counseling assistance role to these businesses because we have 100 people. They've seen a lot. I'm standing next to our accounting department, and they actually sometimes have to teach people what an invoice is. Like, hey, you have to bill us, So there can be some really basic lessons, and others, certainly eventually they're all going to be working in more sophisticated areas, new areas. So we definitely play that role, and there are certain areas where we can be super effective, like, let's say, pricing, how to price your product. We've seen a lot, and pricing is way more about what the value is to the customer than your cost.
Good point.
You have to start with the value.
Good point.
The costs matter.
One of your rules too is that you want to make sure that you make a profit on every single unit.
Yes. Once you get to scale, that wouldn't be possible in your very first production where you usually are overpaying. But the rule of thumb I look for is if you can see at scale that the cost of your product is no more than 1/5 of its ultimate price at retail, you probably are going to have enough margin to do everything else you need to do. And I mean the cost, including packaging. So everything else you need to do includes marketing, includes paying, if you sell at retail, paying a retailer their margin because they have space and lights and employees, or even a website has costs to carry your product, a lot of costs. I mean, we have 100 people. These people are all working and getting paid. And so, people who help you need to get paid too. So 1/5 is a really good rule of thumb. And I do find people get a little bit misled because they'll start selling directly on their own website. And sure, the margins are great when you're selling directly and you aren't necessarily doing a heck of a lot of marketing or anything expensive, but that's not representative of how you'll, over the long haul, need to succeed.
Right. Excellent. Once again, I'm talking to Jules Pieri. She's the co-founder and CEO of The Grommet, which has launched more than 3,000 consumer products since its inception in 2008. I call her the champion of the underdog inventor entrepreneur. She is also the author of a book just came out in April, How We Make Stuff Now, Turn Ideas into Products That Build Successful Businesses. And her website is thegrommet.com. And when we come back, there's a ton of things I want to talk to you about, Jules. Talk about how to raise capital. And I also want to talk about, this is something very interesting, you say, that why you should be wary of selling your product on Amazon. We will be right back. Hello and welcome back to the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. I'm Kim Kiyosaki and I'm hosting today's show as Robert is out on a speaking event. You can listen to the Rich Dad Radio Show anytime, anywhere on iTunes or Android, and you can hear podcasts. Just go to richdadradio.com. Our guest today is a very special guest, Jules Pieri. She is the co-founder and CEO of The Grommet. If you have a product that you would like to get to market, go to thegrommet.com and check them out because that's what she does. She's brought more than 3,000 consumer products to market since 2008. She wants the independent entrepreneur to, which I also believe, the independent entrepreneur I see as the kind of the way the economy needs to go. We need more and more entrepreneurial mindsets and more entrepreneurs out there making a difference in this world, and that is what she's contributing to, and that's why I'm so excited to have you on this show, Jules.
Thanks for having me. It's so fun. Hey, I did want to say something about that, where the economy's going. There are a lot of cool stats just showing up. One of them, grocery. This is an area where small brands are kicking butt.
Really?
Who would know this? I didn't know this till recently. 19% market share over the last 6 years has moved from big brands to small brands in food. Food, like stuff you put in your body. Like people are choosing to trust these little guys over the known quantity brands. And that's a good sign for all product segments.
I think that is. We're seeing more and more independent bookstores coming up instead of
11% year-over-year growth for the last 5 years. Or actually, they've doubled since 2009, independent bookstores.
Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about, one subject that everybody's interested in is how do you raise money for your business? And how do you raise capital? I know you went knocking on venture capitalist doors, but you have a story as well as how you got started.
Well, I started the way a lot of people would start, which is with friends and family. And in my case, it was friends because I sure as heck don't have that family. But I have the friends, and I think it's really important because it's an intimidating thing to ask for money, and it becomes really loaded when you ask it from people you know. So I have a couple of rules of thumbs. First of all, you should never take anybody's investment if it's not something they could lose without pain. Like never. I turned down a couple investments where people I think were trying to help me out, but I thought the burden of that investment would be higher than the benefit, where they would miss that $10,000.
That's a great rule.
More than
that's a great rule because if you're going to if you're going to take somebody's money as investment money, you've got to be super responsible for that money that they get it back and get it back with a good return. That's not something we ever take lightly.
Yes.
So that's rule number one.
I think number two, I think you have to look every one of them in the eye, and I did this with all of my initial investors. And I said, look, I'm going to work as hard as a human being possibly can work to deliver you the best investment you ever made. But statistically, odds are I'm going to lose every penny. And that's not my goal. But if that happens, I need to be able to look you in the eye, and we could still have a drink or Thanksgiving dinner or whatever it is that we do together. I need to know that would be possible because it wouldn't be worth it to me to lose this relationship over an investment.
Very good rule.
And you watch their behavior, and usually people say yes because they're big boys and girls. But if they can't say that, or you see any kind of squirming, I just would stay away because here's the thing. You are going to carry the burden of responsibility for this investment. You should work as hard as you possibly can, but you can't carry the double burden of their discomfort or fear or risk. You just cannot. And so you've got to take that off the table and say, this is a risk. I'm acknowledging it. I need you to acknowledge it too.
Very good. We actually did that on a company we were raising money for, and we told the group, and they were all very excited, and they're all very enthusiastic, and we said, you could lose this money, and you need to know that. And that kind of woke people up to the romance of it versus the reality of it.
Yes.
And people then were able to make their own decisions. Like you said, they're big boys and girls.
So I will say this, though. When I first I did all that, raised money, I collected checks, and I put them in a file and didn't cash the first checks that I raised, and I was feeling a little paralyzed. Having still done all that, I still felt a little paralyzed. And a venture capital friend of mine said, "Get over it, Jules. Here's the deal. I lose money every single day. This is part of the deal when you're an investor. And as long as I know somebody has done their best and really done everything they could, I don't lose sleep over it." And that got me going. Like, I ran to the bank with the checks, and I'd cash the checks. I started going. I needed a little bit, one final kick in the butt. Like, it's okay, go. So I'm giving that to your listeners. It's
Good.
okay, go.
Very nice, very nice. And you're saying it's not, it's in this environment, it's a little tough to raise money from traditional places, but you like crowdfunding.
I do. It's been such a gift to this segment. We started a little bit before crowdfunding existed, and it was so much harder. But the two platforms, the primary ones, are Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and they have two huge benefits. In a product like our companies invent, you're really able to get a loan against your first run of inventory, your first manufacturing run, and that's very hard to achieve anywhere else. And it's a fantastic thing. I think of it as a loan against that production. And the second thing they're really great for is they create and cause a lot of healthy discipline on the form of these companies, because it is a mini and demanding marketing campaign, and it does create operational demands on the company. You have to ship these things. You have to run a mini business for the time that you're running a campaign. So for me, it's a little bit of a proof point or a proving ground for these companies. And if you don't like doing that, you're probably not going to like doing the business, because it's going to be a lot harder than a Kickstarter.
So
campaign.
It's almost like a beta test for your product.
It is a beta.
Not just for the product, but for you as an entrepreneur.
I think it's more for that than even the product, because the market read isn't perfect. The reason it's not perfect is that the population on Kickstarter is way more cutting edge than the average consumer. They are interested in, they will take more risk. And the other reason it's not a perfect read is that almost always the product offers are discounted, so the price is not representative of what you will charge in the future. So price is really important. Something that's really, really worth $30 or needs to cost $30. If you're charging $20, you don't really have a good market read on it.
How best to test the price? How do you test the price?
I would say one of the playbook things I see, I'm an entrepreneur in residence at Harvard Business School, and the students there, that they'll run a $500 Instagram campaign. Even before they have the product, they'll send the traffic to a landing page, which really just promises the product.
Okay.
And they're testing responses to whatever it is, colors, styles, prices. And they're not fooling anyone. They're not pretending the product exists. They will say, "Hey, give us your email. We'll let you know when it's actually real." But they're using that for market research.
And anybody could do that. Anybody could do that.
Anybody could do that. Anybody could do that. You can also, I have a story in the book about Joelle Mertz. She created a product called Buttery, which is the flip-top butter cover for your counter, so you can keep your butter room temperature. And that's kind of a fresh idea that people don't realize that's actually healthy or sanitary to do. It's safe, rather, to do. And she wanted to know if people would believe her. She wanted to know what colors they like, what prices they would respond to. So here's how she does her market research. It cracks me up. She buys the cheapest ticket she can. She lives in LA. She goes to LAX, buys like a Spirit, $49 ticket, goes past security, and goes from gate to gate with a stack of clipboards and a prototype of her product. She doesn't reveal she is the entrepreneur, because you won't get honest answers. People need to think she's a market research lady. And she just, finds out whatever she needs to find, whatever her problem of the month is. So for $49, she gets what would
That's
cost
great. She
tens
goes,
of thousands.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Steal that idea. It's a great one.
Something else that you say that I like too, and because I see this all the time when we call it analysis paralysis, is people want to make sure that their product is perfect before it goes to the market. They want to make sure every single thing is just perfect, so they never even launch their product. They spend all their time planning it, fine-tuning it, redesigning it, but it never makes it to product. It never makes it to launch. Yeah,
there's a yin and yang there, because on one hand, prototyping is many times and as quickly as possible is super healthy. And as long as you stay in inexpensive, fast methods, like literally cardboard, foam, clay, drawings, not CAD drawings, not necessarily 3D printed right away. If you spend time there, I think that's healthy. I think, the prototypes are like truth serum. When people look at them, they see things that they wouldn't understand from words or sometimes even drawings. So that cycle is a good cycle to stay in. But as you said, the sort of other end of it where you're really at perfection mode, not so healthy.
Yeah, yes. And let me talk about, before we get to Amazon, one of your products was Fitbit that you took to market.
Yes.
You weren't crazy about Fitbit in the very beginning. Why was that, and what changed your mind to where you embraced it and took it to the market?
Well, there were two problems. The first one was it really wasn't ready for prime time when we first saw it. It was buggy, and you have to sort of go in the Wayback Machine in 2010 when we first saw it. We'd never seen a product where you could have data on your wrists like that you could share data with the manufacturer, with your phone, with your friends. And so we had to wrap our minds around this like possibility in the world. So when it was buggy, it was hard to tell if it was user error or it was the product. And it was probably a bit of both, but until we're sure it's working, it can't be launched. So we had to sit on it until they had fixed it. I'd say the other thing was it's not uncommon for a young company to be an operational shit show, but it was a bad one. They just weren't delivering, and that was expensive. And I remember personally at the holiday in 2011 getting on the phone with the founder and saying, like, James, you cannot do this to me. It's the guy who took the company public. You cannot do this to my customers.
So they were buying but not delivering?
Yes.
So
okay.
That's a huge piece. I mean, that can be kind of the curse of success, whereby your product is a huge hit, but if you can't deliver, you're out of business.
Yeah, and what was happening, or what happens sometimes is, I don't know, I'm not saying it happened with Fitbit, but sometimes sort of a new shiny account shows up, and you might have made commitments to, say, a bunch of small independent retailers, and then, the big national chain says, hey, I'm in. And small makers don't understand, you know what, put those big guys on ice. Handle the people who were there for you in the beginning, because the big guys will wait. If your product is so great now, it'll be so great in 2 months or whenever your next shipment is. But don't screw the little guys who helped you or the early customers. Always take care of them.
Is that what you did with Fitbit to solve that problem when they weren't delivering?
We figured it out. Yeah, we got there. But we're a company that gets on the phone with people. We have real relationships with our makers, and it's not an arm's length relationship. So we figured it out.
Yeah, a lot of what I hear, and I like the woman who does her market research at the airports. Everybody thinks it's such a digital world, and everything has to be online. You have to do all your market research online. You have to be digital in order to succeed today, and it's a big part of it, granted. But a lot of your success seems to come from, as you say, relationships, getting out, talking to people, not kind of almost the old-fashioned way.
Well, it's so strange to me, Kim, that being human and telling the truth and being trustworthy is distinctive. Because
that's a sad stuff. That's a sad line.
It is. Well, I mean, here's the deal. That's exactly what a local independent retailer would be normally, right? And we do it digitally, to be fair. We do deliver what we do digitally, so we do it at a larger scale in kind of our core way we operate on a website. But we try to kind of create those human connections. Our faces are on the videos. We have video with every product, and I read every comment personally that we get from our daily customer survey, so we do have a digital way of communicating. Mm-hmm. But I care. These are not like anonymous things, and we collectively care. And it's, marketplaces and much of retail, the larger guys, it is pretty arm's length. On a marketplace, the company, I mean, like a Wayfair or an Amazon, they wouldn't ever see the product. They wouldn't have ever touched it.
Right.
So, how could they extend their reputation or trust to it? That's not their promise to you, but it is our promise.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the key to business is relationships and keeping those relationships strong. Let's go to Amazon. Because everybody loves Amazon. Amazon's like the pretty guy out there, girl out there that everybody wants to be a part of. And you say, be wary, and Amazon can be a risk. What happened?
Yes.
Why?
So what you said is absolutely true. Like, what's not to love? Great selection, it's fair pricing, and the product's going to show up. Amazon really looks out for that customer in terms of the operational side of the business, for sure. They're masters at it. I have mad respect for them. But what happened was that Amazon has become a sea of counterfeits and fake products and fake reviews for one really simple reason, which is in 2015, Jeff Bezos was more interested in studying his Chinese competitor Alibaba than anything else, and he wanted Chinese suppliers on the platform. So he removed the rule that required every supplier to have a domestic representative, almost like a speed bump that used to exist. Took that away. So 25% of what's on Amazon now is coming in the U.S., is coming directly from a Chinese factory. And these are not companies that built a brand or have their own intellectual property. They study, because Amazon publishes so much data, what's selling on Amazon and knock it off. Sometimes it's a copycat, and sometimes it's a direct counterfeit. There's a difference. A counterfeit uses the brand name of the original company, uses their photos. They even have figured out how to list their listings and the reviews and pixel for pixel steal their Amazon listing. So you can go buy this product. You go buy that buttery that I mentioned, or any product, Fitbit or whatever, and you think you're getting the original one because it's under the brand name that you want. It's not. It's a fake product, and it's sold at a lower price, so you think you're getting a great deal. That's how they win the top listing, but it's not the same product. And you're mad at you're mad at Fitbit, you're mad at Buttery, you're mad at the company you thought you bought from. You're not even mad at Amazon because you thought the company, was shady, not Amazon, but it's Amazon that created that situation. This wasn't possible in a world of normal retail, because normal retailers don't sell counterfeits. They vet their vendors.
Yeah. It's interesting. When we first had our first Chinese publisher, Robert was signing a book in Australia, and it was a Chinese book, and he goes, "Oh, this is the first Chinese book I've ever signed of Rich Dad, Poor Dad." And I looked at it and I went, "Robert, that's not ours." And we found out our own publisher had one legit copy going out the front and 5 counterfeit going out the back. So I understand what you're saying. And you know what else with Amazon, because we experience this at our company, they have more data about who's buying the product, what's selling best, what's not selling best. But we don't get access to all that information. So they have a ton of information. Are they also using this information for their own benefit and their own products?
Yeah, what they do is now they have a very vibrant private label business. So they see, hey, look, Kim's product is really rocking. Let's make our own version of that. And so they have a lot of brands that, you don't know they're Amazon because they're, a name like
different names,
Beaver Row or whatever. It's not clear it's an Amazon brand, and they sell those private label copycats under those names. So yes, it's unprecedented. It's very, very unusual in the world for one company to control all that information and access to customers and be the supplier, competing with their own suppliers.
Yeah, and
it's unprecedented.
There's a lot of there's a lot of businesses out there teaching people how to sell on Amazon, and it seems so easy. It's such an easy way to get your product out there. So if it's not Amazon, where do you go? How do you get your product out there if not Amazon?
Well, I think traditional retailers still are incredibly important, and 90% of actual retail is still bricks and mortar. So let's not overlook that as well. And most of our makers have a pretty vibrant website of their own, and Instagram can be one of their best friends for getting the word out. It's a wonderful platform for independent brands. And I would look at even other marketplaces are a little more credible, whether it's a lot of retailers are starting to sort of tack a marketplace onto their existing offering. We have a partnership with Ace Hardware, and they love supporting the little guy. They love supporting independent companies, and you can work with them online or in their own 5,000 stores. So there are still lots of great options out there, and I really think it's much healthier in any business not to have just one customer or one large customer.
Right.
That's just business 101. So even if you want to be on Amazon, I would mitigate that risk by having a diversity of suppliers. And the trick there is to make sure that what you have on Amazon doesn't, the price doesn't get ruined. And the best way to do that is have your own marketplace there, your own storefront on Amazon. Don't sell to Amazon directly because their prices are algorithmic. They don't, they're not trying to sort of be matched to the market price. They're adjusting them automatically. And so if your price in the market, say, is $100 for a product and Amazon's algorithm one day decide it's $90, well, that becomes the de facto market price. You just lost 10% on your price permanently.
Well, Jules, thank you so much for being on the program. There's so many more questions I could ask, but I'm going to recommend people go out there and buy your book, How We Make Stuff Now, Turn Ideas into Products That Build Successful Businesses. Jules Pieri. She's a co-founder and CEO of The Grommet, and her website is thegrommet, GROMMET.com, thegrommet.com. Jules, thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for creating all these wonderful entrepreneurs and supporting, as I call it, the underdog and the independents out there. I think your work is invaluable, and I have the greatest of admiration for you. So keep up the good work.
Thanks so much, Kim.
Thank you. And when we come back, we're going to go into Ask Kim. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and the bad news about money. I'm Kim Kiyosaki, and we have been speaking with Jules Pieri. What a great, great book she's got, How We Make Stuff Now, Turn Ideas into Products That Build Successful Businesses. If you have a product, if you're launching a product, if you've launched a product, get her book because it is filled with all types of gems. I mean, everything from packaging to distribution to cash flow, all of it in this book. So highly recommend it. We didn't even touch on a lot of the points that she said, but one of the things she said in the very beginning, she says that you have to decide from the very start, what do you stand for, and put it in stone. Basically, put it in writing. What do you stand for? What are your values? And make sure you stay true to your values because as we've seen, many businesses, as they grow and they get more and more profitable, some of those values go out the door. So decide on what you stand for and put it in stone. So again, thank you, Jules Pieri. Appreciate your insight. Appreciate the gift that you're giving all of us. So now we're going to go into Ask Kim. As Robert is not here today, you can submit your questions to Ask Robert or Ask Kim at richdadradio.com. And again, we archive all of our programs so that you and your family and your friends can go back and listen to the programs again and again, because oftentimes where you are today is someplace where you were not last year, and you may hear new things, new information that may help you accelerate your own journey. So please listen at richdadradio.com. Melissa, what is our first question?
Our first question today, Kim, comes from Audra in Round Rock, Texas.
I know Round Rock.
Yeah, favorite book, Rich Woman.
Oh, thank you very much, Audra.
She says this. She says, Kim, my sister and I are thinking about starting a business together. We're studying, we vetted the viability of our product and taken other steps. My question is, what do you feel are the top 2 pitfalls that first-time business owners will face? Our goal is to anticipate the problems and have a plan in place before we start.
Okay, good question, Audra. Well, congratulations on doing all the work getting ready to launch. But I'm going to tell you one little secret is you're never going to be able to anticipate all the pitfalls because you're going to come up against a lot of pitfalls. But that's the beauty of entrepreneurship. One thing you've got to get comfortable with at some point is being comfortable making mistakes because that's how you're going to learn. So just know, it sounds like you're kind of afraid of getting started because you don't want to make a mistake. Well, just know you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and every mistake you make, if you learn from it, take the lesson because a mistake just shows you something you didn't know. Take the lesson and apply it to the business. The business is going to get is going to grow more, is going to become more successful. So just know that you're not going to anticipate every problem because you've never been here before. It's a new thing for you. So it's exciting, but it's actually the fast track to personal development, I believe, is entrepreneurship. Because with every mistake you're going to learn, you're going to grow. The second thing I would say is make sure you're paying attention to the bottom line. You know, we are Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We're all about cash flow. And as Jules Pieri said, she wants to make sure that you make a profit with every single unit you sell. So be really, really honest about what the product costs, what goes into it, including PR, including marketing. What does that product cost? And make sure that you're making a profit. Make sure you've got positive cash flow. Maybe not in the very beginning, but have a plan in place so that that cash flow is coming, because a business can only survive as long as it's making money. So thank you, Audra. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Kellen in Indiana. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Says, I'm 1 year into running my online business. As with most startups, there are good days and bad. My question is, how do you and Robert navigate your bad days in business? And what, if anything, do you do when you have an exceptionally good business day?
Let's see. Every day we have a bad day and a good day.
Every day is good and bad.
Every day is good and bad. It kind of goes back to the same thing with Audra, is that, you know, a bad day is like, what did you learn? I mean, at the end of the day, Robert and I would often sit down and go, okay, so what happened today? Why did this happen? What did we learn? What do we need to do differently? So the bad days, actually, I don't look at as bad days anymore, because every step along the way is getting me more successful. I'm growing from it. I'm learning from it. You know, as I said, Robert's at a seminar right now as a student because we want to keep learning. So the bad days, you just, you know, one of the keys to being an entrepreneur, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you got to have that resilience. You've got to be able to, you know, come back from a setback. And if you don't have that, maybe entrepreneurship isn't for you. But just know you're going to have good days and bad days. But the bad days sometimes can turn into some of the best days because they're going to have the biggest lessons and the biggest learnings. So I look back on some of the horrendous things that we've been through in our business, and looking back, it's the best thing that could have happened, because had that not happened, we wouldn't be where we are today. So, and with the good days and with all the wins, always celebrate your wins. We love to celebrate our wins. So celebrate the wins, but also celebrate the lessons that you learn along the way. So thank you, Kellen, for the question. And again, you can submit your questions to Ask Robert or Ask Kim at richdadradio.com. Again, I want to thank Jules Pieri, the co-founder of Grommet. She is really the champion for the small and independent entrepreneurs getting their products to market. So I just want to leave it to, here's to you, the makers, the entrepreneurs, the ones that are out there taking those first steps, making their dreams come true. Here's to you. Thanks for listening.